Welcome to the Ruthless Criticism Podcast. Today is May 1st. For all of those that don't know, May 1st is International Workers' Day, colloquially called May Day. And that is also 4 days before Karl Marx's birthday, which also happens to be Cinco de Mayo. So pretty soon you'll have a pretty good excuse to bake a cake as well as drink tons of beer. But today we are working on significantly more important things. We went out and enjoyed the festivities in San Jose. San Jose has had an annual May Day celebration since at least 2006, although it may have preceded that. 2006 was sort of a jumping off point because it was in 2006 that the May Day celebration got about 600,000 people out into the street. That was mostly in response to the 2006 Sensenbrenner immigration bill, which was threatening immigrant communities across the United States. And although subsequent May Days have seen significantly lower turnouts, it's generally been around 2,000 people annually since then. One exception was last year with the election of Trump, where we saw about 4,000 to 5,000 people participating. In this clip, we'll hear a quick interview I had with Nassim Nouri of the Santa Clara County Green Party, asking her some questions with respect to what might be affecting these turnouts in recent years and how things might proceed in the future, as well as where the Green Party is positioned nationally with respect to all the teacher strikes. We are joined now by
Nassim Nouri.
And what organization were you with, Nassim?
Green Party of Santa Clara County.
And what brings you out here today?
I'm here to support what is happening, all the groups that are coming together to acknowledge and honor the sacrifices that people before us have made in order for us to have a strong international workers' effort.
And how do you feel that effort's going these days?
It's not doing so well in the U.S. I have hopes for many other countries that do make a much more serious observation of this day and the rights of workers. And in a lot of countries, unions are better supported and much better respected than here.
And was the Green Party at all participating in the organization of this event?
We have, to a very small degree, we have helped the organizers, but we are not one of the major sponsors or organizers.
And thus far, how do you think it's going to compare to the previous May Days?
I think every year the crowds seem to be fewer and fewer, so that's a concern to me. And I think it seems like things are going to have to get a lot worse before they get better.
You know, I noticed last year, so historically, at least as far as I understand it, there was about 2,000 people per year after the 2006 one. So 2006, there was about 600,000 or so that came out. It was an incredible sort of response to the Sensenbrenner bill, the immigration bill. And then since then, from what I understand, there used to be about 2,000 annually. Last year, being the first year that Trump was elected and inaugurated, we did seem to have a little bit higher numbers than that. I think most of the estimates are around 4,000 to 5,000. What do you put the crowd size at now?
I'm actually not sure. The crowds are pretty dispersed at this point. I will be thrilled if we actually have 2,000 people here. Again, I don't want to be pessimistic about it, but I do believe that the numbers are going down. And if Trump is the only unifier for the left, we are in bigger trouble than I thought.
What do you think of the messaging of this year's march? Do you think it's adequate? Do you think maybe that's part of it? Do you think there's issues with, it seems to be developing into more of a cultural event, or it seems to have taken on sort of a cultural aspect as opposed to a political one. Do you think that tends to affect the numbers at all?
I think our biggest issue is education. I think if we are able, by messaging, by graphics, and by speeches and rallies, if we're able to educate people who take their time to come out to this event about the history of the event and the reason why we should be supporting workers' rights and unions today, then we have failed. I don't take exceptions with the messaging being more culturally focused. I think that's a value too, but I think the focus still needs to be on workers' rights and the fact that unions are literally under attack today.
And do you think if there was a hard political demand, so let's say that this movement and this attempt to get people organized and mobilized, if that was attached to something more concrete, like let's say fighting for local minimum wage increases, do you think that would draw more people?
I think it did. We saw that happening in that last couple of years. It did happen last year, probably, and I attribute the blip in the number of people participated to that. But I do think that right now, on a national level, there is the beginning of a union strengthening and inspiration happening. I see that. I think Puerto Rico might be a flashpoint right now for workers' rights as most things are becoming privatized. We hear that there are more unions and more worker activists in support of celebrating this day. I obviously hope for more in progressive California, but I do know that there are political forces and corporate forces fighting very hard against that.
Returning to the Green Party real quick, we've seen, and on that note, we've seen a major uptick in the teachers movement. West Virginia obviously starting with the strike, then I believe it spread actually into Ohio. Now it's headed more south. There's Arizona now that's talking about possibly having a teacher strike. I think Louisiana just had, or is going to be having a vote on a statewide teacher strike. So with all this spread in the teachers movement, are there any particular efforts by the Green Party to actually get involved in that struggle and maybe work a little bit closer with labor and take some of that away from the historic Democrat control that it has?
I know that nationally there are some efforts. In Philadelphia, Green Party has really aligned with the Poor People's Campaign, and that campaign has reached out to unions or heavily supported by unions there. I don't see that happening very much right here locally. We have a very small party locally in our county, and I think in Oakland and Berkeley there are more efforts on that. I hope that we can work together and form stronger coalitions, but if there are a lot of folks that think progressive California is going to be easier to mobilize. I actually don't think that's the case. We see why in southern states and particularly in Louisiana that movement is going to be very strong because the reaction to the extreme right is going to inspire a lot more people to come out and defend their rights. And frankly, the sad point is poverty. I don't think California is as poor as some of those other states, so the majority of people aren't going to come out in support of this type of workers' right movement.
All right, thank you very much.
So a little bit interesting there is you probably heard towards the end it started to get fairly loud in the background. That is because when we began the interview, there might have been maybe only about 300 or 400 people there. And towards the end, there was actually a separate contingent that had joined with the group that was gathering in the park. And I think probably overall the numbers that I saw for the day, or what I would estimate for the day, were between 500 and 1,000. Definitely still far less significant than previous May Days, certainly far less significant than the 2006, but not nearly as bad as it first appeared when the interview was started. So there's a little bit of positive news there. More coverage of this event will be available shortly, so stay tuned for more. And as always, if you like this podcast or you found it insightful in any way, please leave a comment, thumbs up, and as always, make sure that you're subscribed.